Hollywood is one of the most famous places in the world. But why did movies end up there and not somewhere else? Today, you'll learn the real history of Hollywood and the English people use to talk about it. Welcome back to the Learn English podcast, the podcast teaching English in context so you can learn naturally. If you are a regular listener to the show, you know that I am from Southern California and that I spent a number of years living in Los Angeles. And one of the most famous parts of LA is Hollywood. And with the Academy Awards coming up this weekend, I thought this was a great opportunity to talk about Hollywood itself. By the end of the episode, you will learn why Hollywood was created, when it peaked, and why it's in decline now. You're also going to learn the real English vocabulary that people use when they talk about filmmaking. Are you ready to practice your listening comprehension and learn this vocabulary? Then follow along because we're about to begin. Let's go back to the beginning. In the 1900s, Hollywood was not famous at all. It was farmland with orange trees and lots of open land. At the time, the movie industry in the United States was actually located on the East Coast in New York City and New Jersey. That makes a lot of sense because even now, New York City is the most important and largest city in the United States. It makes sense that this new industry of filmmaking was located there. So why did filmmakers leave it and travel all across the United States to the West Coast? There were three main reasons for this, and the first one surprises a lot of people. It was because they were escaping from someone named Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison is one of the most famous inventors in American history, but he's also a little controversial. He helped popularize the electric light bulb and early filmmaking technology, which gave him a lot of power. At this time, making movies was very new and it wasn't really considered to be art. People were still learning how cameras and film worked, and they were also fighting about who was allowed to use this technology. This problem became very important for the history of Hollywood. A patent is a legal right as to who controls a certain invention. And Thomas Edison had a lot of patents for filmmaking technology. He had patents for cameras, film projectors, and other important equipment. This led him to believe that his companies should be able to control who made movies. He created a group called the Edison Trust, and this group sued filmmakers, which meant that they took them to court and demanded money, or demanded that they stopped filming. At the time, many filmmakers were independent, which meant that they did not work for movie studios, and they just wanted the freedom to be able to make films. Instead, they faced lawsuits and lost their equipment. Understandably, they did not like this, so they left. They traveled west to California, where Edison had less power, and the courts were more relaxed. This meant that they could escape much of his legal control. Los Angeles's location was also another benefit for this. If Edison somehow found them or was successful in suing them in court, they could quickly go across the border to Mexico and be out of his reach. Moving from the East Coast to California was not easy. This was the early 1900s, which meant that this was a long and expensive trip. There were no flights that you could take to quickly get from one coast to the other. But as more and more filmmakers moved, Hollywood slowly became the center of the movie business in the United States. The second reason why Hollywood was founded here was because of the weather. Early movies depended on lots of natural light, which is light that comes from the sun from being outdoors. Remember, this was the early 1900s, so strong studio lights did not exist. I know that's kind of hard to think of now because every YouTube or Instagram creator has a ring light, but at the time, filmmakers really had to use natural sunlight. If you are a longtime listener to the show, you have heard me talk about the weather in Southern California before. I have said it in the past, but where I live in California, it is sunny most days of the year. For example, this past December, it was 22 degrees in Los Angeles, which is about 71 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was sunny. By moving to Southern California, filmmakers were able to take advantage of the sunny weather. They were able to film for more days out of the year. That meant they were able to make more films and, of course, more money. And the third reason they came to California is the geography. California has a lot of diverse landscapes. We have beaches, deserts, mountains, and cities. You might even see tourism advertisements that say that in Southern California, you can go surfing in the morning and skiing in the afternoon. Now, that would be a very exhausting day, but it's true. From my house, within a 2-hour drive, I can go to the beach, I can go to the mountains, or the desert. So this diverse landscape meant that filmmakers could film many different types of scenes without having to travel very far. A movie could look like it was filmed in many different countries, even if it was filmed in just one state. This meant that filmmaking was easier and cheaper to do. This saved them a lot of time and money. By the 1910s, Hollywood was the center of film production in the country, and by the 1920s, studios like Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, and 20th Century Fox all were firmly established. Hollywood was becoming an industry. Then another major change happened. For years, movies were silent, actors did not speak, and live music was played in theaters. But this changed in 1927 with a film called The Jazz Singer. It was the first successful studio film, and it was a talkie. If you have listened to my episode I did on 1920s vocabulary, you have heard this term. A talkie was a movie that had sound in which the actors actually talked and spoke their lines.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
This was a major change. Audiences were shocked and excited. Sound changed how movies were made. Writers had to write dialogue, not just actions. And actors had to speak clearly. This meant that some silent film actors became less popular because they had strange voices or different accents that would not work on film. And after that, silent films disappeared. After sound films became popular, Hollywood entered its most powerful phase, the golden age of Hollywood. This period lasted from the end of the 1920s to the 1950s. During this time, Hollywood was dominated by 5 major film studios: MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, and RKO. These film studios controlled actors, movies, theaters, and equipment, every major part of the film industry. This is called a monopoly, when one group controls an entire industry. A key part of the studio system was that actors, directors, and writers had to sign long contracts with a film studio to be able to work. Studios controlled what roles an actor was allowed to play, how they looked, and how they behaved in public. This meant that the studio controlled an actor's public image, which means how they were seen by the world. They chose their photos, interviews, and even who they were dating. This is how Hollywood created the idea of the movie star. That freedom and independence that Hollywood was built on was now gone. But the golden age was Hollywood's peak in global entertainment. During this time, studios produced a large number of films every year, including classics like The Wizard of Oz, Casablanca, and Singing in the Rain. These movies defined American cinema and shaped how people around the world imagined Hollywood. It also created famous stars like Judy Garland, Humphrey Bogart, Audrey Hepburn, and James Stewart. Even Marilyn Monroe started her acting career under the studio system. But the golden age didn't last forever. Because film studios controlled movies and where they were shown, it was really difficult for independent filmmakers to compete. Then in 1948, the US Supreme Court ruled that this system was illegal, which weakened the monopoly. Actors began to demand more freedom and started to renegotiate their contracts so they could choose which roles they wanted to take. Then in the 1950s, television arrived. Families stayed at home and watched TV instead of going to the movie theater. This further weakened the studio's power, and by the 1960s, the studio system was mainly gone. And that brings us to Hollywood today. Hollywood is still famous, but fewer movies are filmed there today. In Los Angeles, there is a line that you will see in the news a lot right now, and that line is that nothing films in LA anymore. Before, if you were an actor, you had to move to Los Angeles because the majority of films and TV shows were filmed here. You really had to live here if you wanted to work in the film industry. Now, though, less than 20% of all TV shows and movies are filmed in Hollywood. And there are a number of reasons for this. The first one is the expense. I've talked about this before on an episode I did about California, but California is one of the most expensive states to live in the entire country. And LA in particular is a very expensive city. Labor is expensive, housing is expensive, and there's a lot of regulations and permits you need to get to film in LA. All of that adds to the cost. Other places offer tax breaks, which are government incentives to help reduce the cost for film production. Places like Georgia, Canada, the UK, and even Australia have become popular filming locations because of their tax breaks. Funny enough, New York is one of the places that's been offering these tax breaks, which has started attracting filmmaking back to the state. The second reason for Hollywood's decline is that technology has improved and has allowed people to film basically anywhere. Green screens and digital effects means that you don't have to film outside anymore. You can go to a studio in a cheaper location and get the same job done. This has led streaming services like Amazon and Netflix to make their content in places outside of Los Angeles. California has tried to reverse this trend recently. Our current governor announced a few months ago that he was going to increase the amount of tax incentives and try to bring filming back to LA. But I don't know how successful it's been, and we will have to see if this trend changes in the future. Today, many movies are filmed in other places, but Hollywood is still important for business decisions, money, and contracts. I will say that I have a cousin who is a lawyer. He is an entertainment contract lawyer, so he works on the contracts that studios have when they start film production. And in recent years, the amount of work that he has had has really gone down. The amount of work that his firm is getting has been decreasing because the number of things filmed in Hollywood has been decreasing. So I hope for him and for everyone else who works in Hollywood that this trend does reverse and that things start to film in LA again. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you learned something new about the history of Hollywood. But more importantly, I hope you learned some new vocabulary terms that you can use in everyday conversation. If you liked this episode, if you want more of them in the future, please leave a comment and let me know. A reminder to look at the description of this podcast episode. There you will find helpful links and the vocabulary list. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know. You can follow us on social media, or you can go to our website, learnenglishpod.com. And remember to follow the show so you don't miss our next episode when it comes out next week. Until then, keep learning English.